Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. This is the next seminar in the How to Make Money in New Energy, number 5. So I think we'll get started now. Thank you all for joining us today.
Fantastic. And we are going to be focusing on lifestyle products. So one of our 6 key new energy business model approaches that we've identified in the market. We've just reached an exciting point where we've actually completed all the research into the 6. So we are very excited to be sharing the knowledge around one of them in particular, our lifestyle products, the 5th in the series. And then we will be doing the last one in three weeks or so, I think on the 6th of December. So
let's get started. Actually, before we get started, could someone just let us know that you can hear us? We're doing it from a slightly different location today, so we just want to check.
So you should see in the panel on the webinar software, there's a space for questions. I think there's also space for chat. So if anyone could just quickly note down there that they can hear us broadcasting, that would be super useful. Thank you. Just wait for those to come in, hopefully.
Yep, great. Thank you. So let's go.
Thanks very much, Alistair. So we're just getting the software working now onto the second page. Fantastic. So the voice that you can hear at the moment is Jenny. I'm a senior analyst at Delta, and then I'm here with my colleague Charmaine.
Hi, I'm Charmaine. I'm a principal at Delta, and we both work on the new energy business model service. And we probably both need to update our photos as well. But anyway.
We work alongside our colleagues Kitty and Nigel. They also help us on this. They're actually both on off doing various things this week. Kitty's over in Bonn at COP23, and Nigel is in an amateur dramatics play. So you've got us to talk you through the research today. And just noted on the bottom of this slide, there are a couple of our recent and also our upcoming webinars. As you know, or many of you will know, we don't just do research into business models. We look at different technologies, lots of different markets across Europe and wider. So if you're interested in those topics, then do check out our YouTube channel. And here you can see we recently did one on the UK heat market. That was really interesting, a good success for our colleagues working in that area.
We've also got an upcoming webinar, which is the last of this series. Very exciting moment for us, I think, which talks around how to make money in new energy, and specifically around how companies are bundling different types of products and services together. And that's coming up at the beginning of December. And then the last webinar is around a project that we're working on called Freedom. So this stands for, Jenny, I think you're going to have to help me out on this one.
This is Flexible Residential Energy Demand Optimization and Management.
Basically, this is about a trial into hybrid heat pumps in South Wales. So looking at gathering some real kind of good pilot data and how this can be transferred into new business models, but also for decarbonisation of heat in the UK. So pretty exciting. It's got a lot of interest from across the country.
So to launch into what we're going to talk about today, we like to just share upfront, we call it meatballs on top, our approach to the key messages that we'll then discuss in more detail through the webinar. So the slide that you can see in front of you essentially depicts the 3 product categories that we've identified within this space. And if you've watched the other webinars that we've been doing, this category is slightly different to those because we talk a bit more about the provenance of technology, devices, appliances. We will talk about the different business models, but it's actually the innovative, interesting part is really around the technology and then how that has been built into the different business models. So here you can see standalone devices, then either transitioning into smart home or smart life, and a cross between those two. So we'll get into more detail as I say, but it's thrown up some really interesting questions. So understanding who bears the cost of this different technology, is the customer expected to pay for it, or is the service provider expected to support this? How do you move from early adopters into more of the mass market? And when there's a great emphasis on, at the moment, design and aesthetics, is this something that energy companies are traditionally used to? Possibly not. So it's interesting to sort of see how these existing players and incumbents are addressing this challenge of lifestyle products.
Exactly, and also how we have other companies, excuse me, other companies entering this marketplace who do have that experience and that history of design and technology. So if we move on to our first agenda points, for those of you who are familiar or not familiar with Delta, and I know many of you are, we'll do a very quick introduction to us and where this research sits within the other research that we do. We will then talk about innovations in the sector that we think are very important and that you guys need to know about. Then we'll move on to actually, what do customers think? As Jenny said, is this always going to be an early adopter or a niche market? We'll then look at what's next, where we think this market is going. It's very new, it's very competitive because there's lots of different players. And then we'll take some questions at the end.
Fantastic. I'm just going to double check the slides that we're sharing with you. Yep, perfect. So just double checking the view that you can see the same slides that we're looking at. So lots of you on the call who know us already, so we won't dwell on the details of what Delta do more widely, but it is just worth iterating that for those of you who are new joining us. Essentially, we are helping our clients to transition from old energy to new energy. So this space that is growing around distributed and low carbon generation, but also the real focus on the customer end of the value chain. So understanding what are their needs, what are their interactions with different technologies, what are their what do they really want to achieve, and what technology they're going to employ to do that. And then understanding that again from kind of a network point of view is really important, and we're getting lots of questions around that. So, for example, the project we mentioned, the Freedom Project, lots more people install different technologies in their homes. What impact does this have on the wider grid and the wider network?
And obviously a very hot topic across Europe at the moment. So you can see a selection of our clients. We work with a lot of the large product manufacturers and utilities across Europe and in Asia. So this gives quite a unique perspective on the market. So I'll move on to our particular research sector. So we work in the highlighter sector, new business models in the energy sector, and this is where this research really kind of comes from, but it quite closely allies to an area of our digital research, which is the connected home service. I think some of the guys on the calls are subscribers to this, which is brilliant. So there's a real overlap for this particular one, and if you're familiar with our previous webinars, you'll note that we actually touch on this sector quite a lot, but also some of our previous webinars have overlapped with heat. And we're very collaborative at Delta, so we could exchange a lot of knowledge. It's worth pointing out the three hubs that you can see beneath the business models research. Heat, which has been a very core expertise of ours for many years, digital, which we've been working on for about 5 or 6 years, and more recently distributed generation and flexibility. So we're launching a research service around flexibility, and if you want to find out more information about that, please let us know. Thank you.
Fantastic. This slide here then sort of dives a little bit deeper into understanding the way in which we have approached the new energy business model research. So on the previous slide, you saw that overarching the 3 different clusters or hubs of knowledge that we have. And we've taken a technology agnostic, very broad, kind of overarching, as I say, view of the space. And so to do that and to really understand essentially all the activity that's happening, we have developed a kind of a 3-tier structure. So on the left-hand side, you can see our business model info base. This is where we do really detailed evidence gathering into specific business models that illustrate the concepts that we want to talk about. And here we have 50 plus different case studies, hence being so excited at finishing the research that we've done into the 6 different business models. So we've got around 6, 7 or 8 case studies for each of those 6 categories that you can then see in this middle section here. We have then, within that middle section, understood the market from essentially 2 different perspectives. So we've got 2 reports on each of those 6 sectors. One from the service provider's point of view, and the market point of view, and then one from the customer's point of view. And then now we're moving into the right side of this, so bringing all this research together and asking those really key questions around, for example, what is working, what isn't working, what lessons can we learn from these different business models, are there any geographical hotspots, what's the competitive landscape looking like. So that's the way that we've broken down all this activity and knowledge that's happening across new energy business models.
And the reason why we've done it in that way is we think it's really important to see what's actually going on in the market, so the real evidence base. But for companies operating in this sector and trying to work out how to either enter the new energy market landscape or transition from old to new, helping them develop strategy, helping those strategies to be validated, and working out actually if you need to go and get sign off for a check fundamentally changing a business model, how can you actually do that?
Yeah, so focusing on those examples that are in the market right now today, testing the water.
So lifestyle products is one of the 6 categories that we have developed as part of a framework to understanding the sector. We've covered the previous 4 that you can see highlighted on the screen in the past, so those are available on our YouTube channel, which the link is below. We've got one more coming up, which is bundling, and that's the one I mentioned before, that will be in early December.
So to get into the meat of the content in the webinar today, as we said, we've broken it up into 3 different sections. So to first have a look at the categories that we are seeing in the space, and to really break down all the activity that we see within lifestyle products. So this is based on the first slide that we shared with you, and the first of these 3 being standalone devices. So essentially what we mean here is when a company has developed a specific product and it is the kind of flagship or sort of the flag device or appliance that can then be developed on from there. So good examples here would be Philips and their smart lighting. They are moving into more of a kind of an experience-based proposition, as opposed to just the lighting being the main functionality. Actually, you can link that to mood or link it to location, so you can personalize that kind of experience with regards to lighting. From the energy specific kind of or core energy side of things, lots of smart thermostats. So we've got Climate here, Tado, Zoe, lots of examples of companies coming up with a standalone device that addresses the remote functionality of controlling your heating.
Yeah, so this is a really important category to start, because this is where we've seen the most innovation. So the emphasis on technology and product design is quite easy to understand in this area. You are looking at developing a product to solve a customer need. You can really emphasize that it looks great, so it looks beautiful, people want to have it in their home, but also that the technology behind that is smart, in inverted commas. So it's connected to Wi-Fi, so people can control it remotely. And I think that's the key difference between this and other things. So in the Philips example, you might be able to put in a different color light bulb before, but you wouldn't be able to control that light bulb in order to adjust your mood remotely or from home, so that when you get home, your lighting is as you want it to be.
Or is flagging up different alerts or links to different capabilities. So that's the kind of the flag, the starting point. Then that category will develop into the other 2 categories that we mentioned. So smart home and smart life. And again, lots and lots of activity here. This is just an indication of some of the players. There are many more that we could have put onto this diagram here. So lots of activity going on. But if you look to the left-hand side of the screen and sort of understand the development from standalone devices into smart home, this is essentially breaking down the move from one individual device into an ecosystem or a mini ecosystem of different devices and different capabilities. So we've got lots of examples here. EQ3, they have 200 different products in this space. So lots of different functionalities, capabilities coming together to create a complementary ecosystem, as I say, that can then feed off each other and the connectivity between the different devices.
Yeah, and the key piece into the transition from a standalone device to a smart home is this idea of some sort of gateway ecosystem hub which connects all these devices together, which starts to enable your home to be smart and its own kind of ecosystem. And I think that's the key thing that kind of transitions the two. And so we see a lot of companies are going from a standalone device that might start off in energy, so for example lighting or a thermostat, but actually when it gets into this smart home category it broadens out to being around potentially security, so for example Nest, or assisted living potentially, which is much more about your home life and less about your heating.
Which is a perfect example there of companies like Snappy and House. So we have them on the bottom of the screen because that's actually starting to bleed into then the wider lifestyle piece. So moving maybe out of the home and into the wider energy sphere that you use maybe in transportation or offices. So into that smart home piece. And essentially here, it's really about improving the customer's life at much more of a broader capability. So, yeah, we've mentioned Snappy and House in the assisted living, which is an example that we'll go on to talk about in some more detail.
Yeah, and so another interesting and slightly curveball way of illustrating this is Netatmo, who have designed a connected piece of jewellery, which on one hand sounds very strange and very far away from the idea of what you and I might think about the smart home. But actually, if you think about smartwatches and Fitbits, actually it starts to, if you can connect all those devices up to a central ecosystem, that is a good example of what we mean by smart life. So the intelligence, the data, the automation all consolidates around one ecosystem or product, but it doesn't necessarily have to do that.
Yeah, and very crucially, that example there is that, again, linking back to the design and the aesthetics and the branding, which is a key piece in this pillar that we're talking about. So it's less around the financials and the logical decision making from a customer's point of view. Customers, we aren't logical a lot of the time, and so these different drivers play into the decision making process around these different technologies, and the marketing and the communication piece that is built around them to bring it to the customer. So this slide kind of summarizes all the activity, illustrates that we see lots of activity in this space, and that we see lots of entrants starting with standalone devices and then developing into smart home and smart life. So we'll go into talk about now the different business models that are associated with these technologies and appliances.
So the business models that we're going to cover in this sector aren't particularly innovative. You guys should be familiar with them. They should be quite intuitive. So this slide might feel like it's business model 101, but I'll go through it and then we can kind of talk around why we think it's really important to distinguish these in this way. So the first type of business model is actually two, really. It's very much a product margin based business model where revenue or profit is acquired through a one-off sale. So selling a product once to a customer and getting the revenue from that. Related to this, as a kind of subcategory, we think also we've seen the emergence of business models where the product is given away as part of a larger offering. So a very classic and easy to understand example is a thermostat that is given away as part of an energy tariff. So sign up to this tariff for 3 years and you get a free smart thermostat. So the idea is this product margin subsidizes another product that is important to the service provider. It's quite a simple, straightforward model. It's quite a familiar one to a lot of the energy sector, but actually it's quite an important one, particularly when you're starting off, because it's very achievable. So we see this business model evolving into an upsell model. So it's a very natural progression from giving away a product or selling a product once to identifying those customers and saying, actually, you've bought this product or you have this product, we can sell you a similar or a related product. So when we say upsell, we really mean about kind of using the idea of smart home or smart devices to say, you are interested in this smart sector, have another smart device.
And the process can be quite iterative, and it can build on the decision making that's happened with regards to the one-off sale, and then using different insight and data to understand what would be the next logical product or device or even service around that.
Yes, exactly. So it could be, for example, with actually we'll come on to the examples because I don't want to give away too much information right now. The second category, third category, sorry, but one further evolution from this kind of product sale is this idea of a subscription sale. So the idea is that you have a regular point of revenue from a customer, monthly or yearly or quarterly, or it's pay as you go. The idea around this being a particularly interesting business model is that it is around lengthening and deepening the customer relationship. So you could say the two categories on the bottom of the screen are all about customer relationships and making sure the customer is stickier. So in the first category, it's about selling that customer more things or getting that customer to do something with their thing that they bought. In the second one, it's about lengthening that customer relationship by having a contractual ongoing relationship or having the ability for that customer to buy when they want. But because that forces them into an interaction with you, it deepens that customer relationship.
So a good example when we were discussing with some of our colleagues who are working on the connected home space of this is the security example that we mentioned previously. And instead of buying a one-off camera that is maybe having has a functionality with regards to security in the home, actually you could develop a proposition whereby the customer subscribes to a service that is ongoing around the device, but then also around the services that are linked to that device. And then even a step further could be putting in a pay-as-you-go aspect. So, for example, when people go on holiday, they would be more interested in either enhancing or extending their security functionality. So you could have a base subscription, and then you could have a more of a premium subscription based on different scenarios for the customer.
So we see that as quite an interesting and a business model, and one that actually borrows a lot from a lot of change that's happening in the wider business marketplace, which we'll come back to in a minute. So the last two slides that we've gone through have been quite a lot from a deep dive into a lot of research that we have done, and we'll talk you through that process because we think it's quite important for understanding this particular category.
So here is a screenshot of what our subscriber page looks like, just really to get a feel for the quantity of insight and the depth of insight that we go into to pull out these key trends and key themes. So linking back to the slide that we had, which identified those three layers of information that we developed. So the case study library, the sort of middle layer assessment around each of those 6 key business model themes, and then the strategic piece. You can see here an indication of the 50 different business models on the bottom right-hand side of the page. So as I said, six or 7 or 8 into each of those pillars, the deep dive, the evidence base, and then the 2 reports that we have, one on the market story, one on the customer view for each of those, and that's on the left. So it's really just to give a feel for the extent of information that we have a look at and the cross view that we have across the whole space. So to go into a specific example then of one of the case studies that we've identified, we mentioned Snappy just earlier. So these guys are a Belgian SME, and they manufacture and retail smart home, as we had them on the diagram, the smart home, between smart home and smart life. So they have a two-way route to market, essentially. They either manufacture the products and retailers buy them and then deliver them to residential customers. So there's an indirect relationship between Snappy and the residential customer through a retailer. Or there's a direct relationship where customers can go directly to Snappy and purchase the devices and the software applications. So that's on the residential side of things. And then at Snappy also work with business users directly as well.
So yeah, the interesting thing about this is that Snappy have both their own web shop, but also they have this indirect route to market through key online retailers that give them access to a wider user group.
Precisely. So getting into the kind of the functionality around the Snappy products and services, we mentioned that they move from so they talked and are relevant to the energy sector, but also others. So simplistic example of one of the functionalities that you can use with Snappy would be, for example, when you wake up and either you have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, you've got a smart kettle that is activated. It could either be remotely, or it could be automatically, or it could be manually. But if that is then connected to other devices, such as the radio or different in-home appliances, it could then trigger a follow-on response. So it could be that when you make that morning cup of coffee, then the radio automatically comes on. And that's a fairly sort of, not simplistic with regards to functionality, but from the customer's point of view, a straightforward, great application that's a consequential result of one from the other.
Yeah, so the Snappy offering is lots of devices, one ecosystem, and they enable the ecosystem to provide that functionality using an open protocol called If This Then That, which is we've seen pop up in a lot of these different business models, but it also starts to enable the customer to really create those use cases, to create those
bespoke and personalised, isn't it?
Yeah, so the bespoke and the personalisation for their home. And this is where we can see this kind of smart home veering into smart life, because actually it's very much in the control of the customer and they can choose to do something else with that. Snappy also, as an example, they started to look at demand disaggregation, so identifying which particular aspects or devices in your home are drawing down loads unnecessarily, or just and start to look at kind of where you can make energy savings and challenge some of that. So itemizing utility bills, but also they have a very interesting and completely unrelated to energy device which helps with assisted living. So one of our colleagues has tested this out, and actually this bit of device that they put into their parents' home has enabled them to keep an eye on their parent. So an elderly relative they're able to see whether they've made a cup of tea in the morning remotely, and so they can keep an eye on whether they're going about their day-to-day life normally, or whether there might be a problem.
And you can easily and quickly see how these kind of concepts, which are just coming to market now, could develop really quite quickly into much more sophisticated applications that are more are very intuitive and automated and useful from the customer's point of view.
Exactly.
And really bleed into the everyday lifestyle and kind of operations within a home.
And one of the other things which is kind of within this marketplace is this is very transferable between geographies. So, for example, if you are from a culture where you might live with your elderly relative, or you might have relatives nearby, and you feel a greater deal of ownership or kind of looking after them, then actually this provides you a way of doing that without actually necessarily living with them, which is quite interesting and very, very kind of attractive for lots of people.
So to move on to get a view from the audience that we have with us, those of you who've done Delta webinars before will know that we have quite a few polls. It's a really nice way to engage you guys, but also get a feel for not just our view, but your view. So following on from that example that we just gave, which moves on from energy into other spaces, it would be interesting to understand what do you think is the most likely influence to actually get a customer to buy into or trigger that purchasing decision around lifestyle products. And so we've listed 5 different options here and categories, and Charmaine is just about to launch the poll. So that should pop up on your screen, and you're able to select one of those 5 options.
So yes, I mean, this is about energy, so we can put energy first, but actually, given what we said, do we think security is going to be the tipping point? Assisted living is an emerging category and an emerging kind of customer need. Entertainment is quite a well-established one, so actually this is much more familiar to customers, so perhaps we think that is the starting point. And then full or home automation, so going straight into, I want my home to be smart, I'm going to connect up my lighting, my heating, my appliances, everything.
So we've got just over 60% of people have voted. So that's fantastic. We'll leave it open for 20 seconds or so more, just so the last of you can cast your vote. There are 3 options actually, which are pretty much neck and neck. So it would be interesting. It would be great if the last of you could vote. We're up to 88% now, actually, so that is good. We've kind of got one emerging winner at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
So,
and not one that I would expect either.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And bearing in mind, the listeners are from an energy background, majority of the time. So, shall we launch the polls?
So let's close that. I'll give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So,
and then if we just share that with everyone.
We're just going to share the results. Okay, so you can see we have a clear, well, not clear, I suppose a winner, security, which I have to say I would not expect. So that's really interesting for us.
I think personally, I actually expected entertainment to potentially win. It's certainly got a strong representation there, because we asked, if we think about the players in that space, lots of people talk about them and their the great kind of focus they have on customers, but actually maybe the representation here is actually going to a core need, not a luxury or a want, but actually more of a need on the security side potentially.
So that's great. Okay, I will take that off screen.
But we will share those results in the slide pack that we publish. So if you're interested in receiving one of those, then certainly let us know, and we can definitely send that out.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. So now we're going to look at how customers are actually engaging, and what we're going to try and talk a bit around in this piece is around this kind of difference between early adopter and mass market, which is particularly relevant for this category.
So delving into some of the reasons why customers are particularly interested and are making that purchasing decision and actually signing up to these different services or or buying the different products. We'll talk through 3 of the general themes that we see at play here that are really catalyzing some of this activity. So the first one is a piece around control and convenience, and this is really where we could say that sort of the smart thermostat, what we mentioned on the standalone devices at the start. So historically, the driver there has been to control your heating in a much more convenient, automatic, useful way. And we've seen lots of engagement on customers reacting to that and being really interested in doing that.
And I think we've seen this has been the kind of the primary leader in the energy sector. So, the reason why smart thermostats have been really popular is, well, for energy companies, they're very easy to relate to energy, but also they hit upon a need that suppliers also think about, customers wanting to be in control of their energy and feeling like they're out of control. So it's a very easy way and straightforward way of addressing that need from the comfort of your sofa. So we think this is interesting, and it's much more about this kind of convenience control piece than it is about actually saving money, we think.
Yeah. And then you can't ignore style. So this we've called this lifestyle, and a lot of the decision making process is being driven by brand, the design, the look and feel of these different devices.
So a couple of the companies that we've profiled in our case studies, actually the founders or senior management team all come from a design background. So the emphasis on style and aesthetics up front is right there from the outset of a company's DNA, from their business model. And that's why I think we see companies coming from non-traditional energy backgrounds into this, and style and design is not, I'm sorry to say, a typically well-known trait of an energy supplier. So this is really interesting, and actually this is why one of the reasons why we decided to cover this as its own pillar and its own category in its own right.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's less about the functionality piece and more about the look and feel. Then thirdly, the lure of new technology. So the attractiveness, the appeal of something that's new. Again, you can't ignore that being a key theme in this space. There's a significant number of items that are being acquired in this way, because it's giving you that new functionality that you haven't had previously, and it's allowing you to do things that you haven't been able to do, and share that with your friends, family, talk about it.
Yeah, and I think there is a real piece around being the first people to have something. So I think for early adopters, obviously that's the kind of ego piece around this is new and I want it and it looks pretty. But also, even if we go into mainstream, actually, the idea of functionality of technology being new and providing some additional benefit to the technology you had before, it's almost like assumed in the world that we live in, and but particularly relevant for these products.
And so the key question being, how quickly or how easily is that? Are these kind of interests that specific customer segments hold? How quickly and easily are they going to spread through to other customer segments and into the more wider mass market applications?
So in our research, one of the things we do to kind of think through those three drivers is we map all of our case studies onto a little quadrant. And we try and do that from the point of view of a customer to understand on the y-axis, so going up the screen, what is the value for the customer? And we typically mean financial, but actually this is about what value benefit does the customer actually see happening from this particular proposition. Then on the x-axis, we talk to the kind of slightly more softer emotional aspects of a proposition. So we call this how compelling is it, but actually one of our clients talk about how addictive a product or proposition. Can I live without it? Oh no, I can't live without this new product. And actually we think those two things are the core drivers, the core kind of important factors when assessing how stand out or how well a proposition can appeal to different companies.
And so here we've got I think is it 9 different companies that we have analysed and used to illustrate the different business models that we talk about, plotted on the diagram.
And we see 2 kind of clusters from this in the lifestyle product sectors. So we do use this quadrant for all of our categories, but in this particular category we see 2 real clusters. So one on the top left, which is around actually these propositions are creating tangible value for the customer. So when we say this, we might mean a financial benefit, or a benefit where a customer can actually say, oh yes, I'm much more comfortable in my home because all of my home is connected up and automated. I feel happier. My energy bill might have gone down a little bit, so that's great. Then on the right hand side, we see this cluster of really exciting and engaging propositions. So not just, oh, this is quite nice, but this is, I want to use this product, I want to interact with it, I want to show it off to all my friends and family. And that not necessarily about value per se, but it is around excitement and emotion.
So we've had, when we've been speaking to some of the companies there, we've been understanding that ones that are applications that are particularly easy to use can range from, for example, again, using the smart thermostat example, a 9-year-old to a 90-year-old could pick up the app and be able to use it without very much or really any sort of instruction. It's very intuitive and easy to use and exciting, so that's a compelling piece.
And so we see a lot of the kind of the category about excitement to be tied up with the design, the aesthetics, this idea of it being kind of about whole life. And we kind of think that this is around, this is a very kind of niche area at the moment, because actually some customers, design to a certain degree is important, but actually beyond that, would you be willing to pay more for that particular product or service? So yeah, it's a really interesting area actually, this one. But related to that, we'd be really interested to understand your perspective when you think some of these products might go from a niche, small early adopters to mass market. And we've purposely messed around a bit with the order of the lines. So this is about, when will these all products just be endemic in everyone's houses or in everyone's lives? So I'm going to launch the poll now.
So we've got different options there. We've got, do we think it's going to be in around 5 years, or do we think it's going to be sooner than that, less than 3 years, and it's really quite imminent that it's going to tip to more of the mass market? Do we think actually that's not likely, and that's not going to happen? Do we see it being fairly far off in around 10 years' time, or actually do some of the people on the call think that we're already at that stage, and lifestyle products are already at the mass market position? Oh, so people have been much faster voting this time. Yeah. We've already got 70%. That's fantastic, and it's split fairly evenly between two of the results, between the first two actually. So less than 3 years or around 5 years.
Yeah.
So we'll just let that run for 30 seconds or so more. But it would be interesting actually for those who haven't voted already to do so, because it is really quite evenly split there.
Yeah. I think I can probably reveal now that no one thinks it's already mass market, which is unsurprising. So we'll give you another 10 seconds or so. And
then we'll close that and launch it so that you can see the results.
Okay, yeah. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close that. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'll just share that with you guys. So you can see a clear winner, I think, less than 3 years.
There was probably a couple of people who maybe changed from the around 5 years into some of the other categories, and thought it was maybe a bit longer away. So we had the 8% and the 10 years. But yes, that clear winner this is coming soon, essentially, is the message there.
I'd be very interested if you feel comfortable doing it. Anyone who's voted never, to let us know why you think never, because that is almost feels contradictory to all of the kind of the commentary that's around in the marketplace. So yeah, if you feel comfortable telling us that'd be great. Okay, thanks very much for that.
Let's now launch a second poll, just to have a kind of a little bit more of a deep dive into when do we think people are going to start paying for these services and products. So we've got the same options there with regards to time, but the previous question was just chipping from niche to mass market. This is really around customers being willing to part with money in some way to acquire these different products and services.
Exactly, and I think two things to bear in mind here. We're talking about energy specifically, but also we're talking about the fact that it would be an explicit payment. So it's wrapped up as an explicit kind of payment, so that they know that they are parting with some of their money because it funds these particular services.
So we've got a clear winner, but we've got less people have voted actually. So that certainly may well change once people start voting.
Super. I think we'll give you another 10-20 seconds or so to have a think about this. I have to say, in this one, I don't know whether I have a firm opinion on this one at all.
Well, currently in the market, at the moment, quite a lot of the products are subsidised in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Either by the supplier or increasingly other players who are kind of willing to get those products into the home. And so by doing that, they are going to subsidise it in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, brilliant. I will give you another 5 seconds to vote for the last people who are deciding. Okay, super. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Let me share that with you. So, interesting, they're already paying. So I'm going to interpret that in one of two ways. I think that's it's being incorporated into companies' business models, or the fact that people are happy to part with cash now, both of which is great. So thank you very much for that. As Jenny said, we will put these slides in the slide pack. So if you guys do want to get hold of that, do let us know. Okay, so we'll move on to, let me just get rid of that poll.
Super. Move on to the third section, and I'm just looking at time, so we've been chatting for a long while.
Yeah,
we've obviously got lots to say, but yeah, if we just explore this third topic, where essentially we're talking about what next. So where is the space going to move to? Here we've got 6 different technology drivers. So understanding fundamentally what is shaping the market, and what are some of the reasons that we think that this space is going to move to where it's going to move. So here we've got these 6 different drivers,
and these will all be really familiar to you guys who are working in this sector. They're themes that are crossing energy, but also our wider kind of public life. And we think they will have quite a profound and fundamental impact on this sector in particular.
So let's take an example. Internet of Things, so IoT. We've got lots of acronyms on this page, so assuming that you know what we mean. So yes, IoT, Internet of Things. Again, let's talk about Snappy, the example we moved to we mentioned earlier, and that move from a standalone device to an ecosystem. And more of the smart home, smart life. This is essentially connecting different devices, creating sophisticated relationships between them to enable you to do different use cases and different functionalities. So that is one of the key technology drivers that is required to enable that shift going forward. Well, similarly, sensors. They are increasingly embedded within lots of different appliances and technologies, and they're collecting lots of data, so leading into the big data category there. And I think what we see is really interesting is a lot of these technology drivers can be used to develop the business models either within the lifestyle products category that we identify, or to develop into others. So time of use optimization, or energy as a service. So that sensors example for energy as a service, we really need to understand customers' consumption at a very detailed level to be able to then design tariffs and propositions that can deliver energy in more of a service orientated way.
Exactly. I think the 2 key categories here are, you could probably simplify it even down one further into, this is about big data and this is about automation. And I think each of these 6 areas can feed into that quite a lot. It's a really interesting one, and I think you will see a lot of convergence of these kind of concepts. And one of the things we try and do in this research service is really kind of give boundaries to some of these themes, because otherwise you can start talking about blockchain and end up in big data, and actually where is the line for these things to stop, and how can you actually employ them in your businesses. So Okay, in the interest of time, we'll move on to our kind of what we think is going to happen next. So we've talked through those kind of 3 product categories, and we've talked through those 3/4 business models. And actually, where do we think this sector is going? What do we think is the most interesting element of it, given how rapid the evolution is and given how new it is? And we think actually it's a conflation of these two areas. So we think the sweet spot is this combination of what we call smart life, so smart, automated beyond the home, and the business model which is around subscription or pay as you go. And this might seem obvious, but actually we think that is the best balance of value for the customer. So the customer benefits is both exciting and engaging, but also really valuable. And then for the service provider, they get a deeper, longer customer relationship, regular revenue, and actually it is potentially more manageable. So if you think of a completely different sector, not completely, but a different sector, and the idea of Netflix. So Netflix, from a product category perspective, understood that the customer did not want to watch television at the time when television is broadcast. So collating that into a portal where they can do that at their own convenience. But then the business model is very much around subscription or pay as you go. And that is about having this revenue that's ongoing, that may or may not be used by the customer, but actually creates this relationship and creates this revenue stream into the future.
Or to take and again to link that example into an energy example, we've seen lots of companies trying to understand the best way in which to get the smart thermostat into the home. And some of the really interesting concepts are linking those in with tariffs. So the customer isn't aware of the financial cost of buying that one-off standalone device upfront. It's either combined into another cost, or it's potentially subsidized. But down the line, you can then tag on a subscription-based service where you have either extended functionality or new functionality, and you charge a fee for doing that in an ongoing way. So it's some examples of how we see those product categories merging with those business models.
So I mean, it's not to say that you can't make money in the other with a combination of the other two, so a smart home and an upsell, but we think long term the smart life subscription is the sweet spot. So that kind of concludes the majority of our research. We can do a very quick poll just in case you guys are interested. So we're going to just ask you whether you like any more information.
So we'll just leave that open. But this gives a very brief indication of some of the research that we've been doing in this space. It's by no means, we'd love to be able to spend hours talking about this. So it's by no means all the detail that we have to go into and we can share, but it's good to pull out some of those key themes and highlights and kind of share those with you. While that poll's open, we'll pull out the questions and just see what we've got as well. We're aware that we are running. We've been talking for a while, so we'll just have a quick look at the questions and see if we can answer any of them.
Okay, so someone's just I think it's a comment rather than a question, but it's very relevant. It'd be interesting to see the division of these things across security, entertainment by country. It feels like it's a cultural topic, but at least in some parts. So actually, that is something that we cover in our connected homes service. So we do look at smart home devices, maybe not necessarily to the extent of smart life, but that is analysed by country, so you can see cultural differences. But we'll definitely feed that back to our smart home teams, and we'll drop a line to the person that gave that feedback. What else have we got? We've got one other question, which is actually around B2B. So is B2B at all relevant here? And I think we've covered off one case study in our research, which is around called Comfy app, which is a piece of software that allows employees to help regulate the indoor climate of their place of work. So actually, because its lifestyle is a different, potentially for B2B, we see it more as being around the employer's relationship with their staff. So making their workplace comfortable or a nice place to be, and so keeping employees engaged.
And so it's more of an indirect, as opposed to a logical financial decision around saving money. Another question here around other sectors. So yeah, certainly we've touched on the fact that energy companies and people who are kind of traditionally involved in the energy space are not necessarily the most experienced with regards to delivering these types of products and business models to market, and thus that that means that we are seeing and are likely to see more of other players who are more experienced with this very customer facing, deeper relationship with the end user coming in and offering different propositions in this space.
Yeah, and I think that seems to be it for the moment. So the last thing we'll finish up on is thank you guys very much for your time. If you've got any feedback at all, we'd love to hear it. We will follow up. There's been a question about how people can get hold of the presentation pack. We'll drop you a line, and if you want the presentation, just drop us a line back. So we'll probably do that in the next kind of day or so.
Yeah, so we'll just upload the recording now to the our YouTube webpage. We'll send out an email to let you know where that is, and then there'll be a link in there to let us know if you'd like the slide pack as well. But fantastic, thank you very much for joining us. That's been a real pleasure, and we hope you have a good afternoon and weekend.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Bye.